We've had a lot of news breaking overseas today, and the Liberal candidate won in South Korea in their presidential election. Moon Jae-in, the next president of South Korea, ending nearly a decade of conservative rule in that country. Mr. Moon has published a book in January about South Korea learning to say no to America, actually believes in better inter-Korean relations, that South Korea should speak with North Korea. Earlier today, Maria Bartiromo spoke with former Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice about North Korea and why China must get involved in the situation.
China is really the only country with any influence. I don't think complete influence, but some influence with the North Koreans. They've always been reluctant to do really tough things with the North Koreans because they've worried about the collapse of the regime more than they've worried about a nuclear North Korea. The administration is saying to them, worry more about a nuclear North Korea, because if you can't do something about the path that they are on, we will have to.
So, what does all this mean for the United States and the rising tensions that we've been reporting on with North Korea? Let's bring in a former Assistant Secretary of Defense on Asia-Pacific Affairs at Heritage Foundation National Security Affairs Senior Fellow, Peter Brookes. Peter, good to see you out of our Washington Bureau today. Obviously, as Secretary of State Rice is speaking about there, the relationship with China is very important. But what about the idea that a liberal, and this is how it's being told to us, president has been elected in South Korea, wants to engage more? Is that something we need more of or less of, engagement between South Korea and the United States and North Korea?
Well, you certainly have to take that into account. He's the president of South Korea. An integral part of any sort of policy towards North Korea. These are an ally of ours, as is Japan, and you need to be talking with them. And you're going to have to take in their views into account as you move forward. Now, what is said in the campaign doesn't necessarily translate into policy in practice after inauguration. So we'll have to see about that. But if he said that and he's concerned, and there's nothing wrong with talking to North Korea, the problem, is that what you can have sometimes is that North Korea will take the engagement and the benefits of engagement and still continue to become an increasing ballistic missile and nuclear threat. That's not helpful at all. Right. If engagement advances our interests and can reduce tensions, then that's good. If it doesn't and it doesn't deal with the threat, then it's not helpful.
You say there's nothing wrong with it, but it would be a big deal if President Trump moved in that direction. Do you think he will?
Well, if the President Trump is different. Now, the North and the South have often talked. Right. I mean, we have families over there that are divided since the Korean War. So this is one people, one nation, essentially, previously, and should be in the future. Now, if President Trump moves in that direction, that's another thought. You have to think about what conditions. You don't want this to be a propaganda coup for the North Korean leader. You don't want it to undermine your interests, your credibility, and your leverage. So you have to really think through that. And in the past, we had President Clinton think about doing this at the end of his term, and he decided against it. I'm not for it at this point, but I'm open to ideas about it.
Fair enough. The other big story today is Afghanistan, and Jennifer Griffith had just reported to us a few moments ago about the Pentagon requesting thousands of more American troops on the ground in Afghanistan, largely to take on the Taliban there. And what's your view on that? Is this a good idea to get more involved and send more American troops to Afghanistan?
Well, I'm generally supportive, but I also like what Sean Spicer said in that clip previously. The president's asking questions about, I'm throwing more assets, I'm throwing American troops at this problem, I'm sending more money resources towards it. What does it get me? What does victory look like? So I think that's a very important central question to the review that's going on. So you and I are both interested in additional details about this, but I think it does provide an opportunity to potentially put enough military pressure on the Taliban, on ISIS and al-Qaeda, but to bring the Taliban to the table for negotiations. But Pakistan is a critical element of this because the Taliban finds refuge in Pakistan. If you can't get Pakistan on board, you've got some challenges. Iran is involved there, and the Russians have been accused of backing the Taliban. So this is a very difficult problem, a lot like North Korea.
And to that point that the president's asking questions about, I think normal Americans are asking similar questions because everybody's been following this since way back in 2001, and there have been troop levels that have gone up and down. There have been times when there have been more troops rather than fewer, and sometimes people say, well, boy, we've tried something like this before. Why would we try the same thing and expect different results? Why will more troops? If you were asked that question, what would your answer be? Why will more troops actually matter in Afghanistan this time?
Well, what I've been concerned about is in the fact in the past we've put troops up and then we've reduced them.
Right.
You know, and that's been the problem. We haven't had a persistent troop level. We should also ask for more assets from NATO to support the Afghan security forces in developing and training them. So, yeah, I mean, it's reasonable for people to say that. So that's why I think we want to see a comprehensive review and a comprehensive strategy that addresses all of these issues. Why is this different now? I do think, like I said, that it has the possibility we can beat the Taliban if we have enough assets there with our Afghan partners and our NATO partners, but we have to keep that pressure on. We can't keep putting pressure on and letting it off, putting in pressure on and letting it off. And also, we have to have a better, a more focused relationship with Pakistan on this issue, because otherwise you have real problems.
Pakistan's the key. Peter Brookes, we always appreciate your analysis. Thanks, sir.
Thanks for having me.